Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. I'd like to welcome here Brent Michael Phillips. Now, he is an author and an energy healer. So, we're going to get to know him, have a great conversation. Brent, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, it's kind of funny that I never thought I'd do anything like this. It's teaching energy healing, being a spiritual leader wasn't on my radar. I notice your collection in the background, which I love because I grew up pretty much a huge nerd. I love Dungeons and Dragons, superheroes, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. And I really fell in love with the early video games. So it was my dream to be a video game developer.
Mm,
And then I went to college at MIT, and that's when I discovered the internet. Which sounds funny today, but that was back in the 80s. No one had heard of the internet. And I really fell in love and I saw this had potential to really change our world. So very long story short, I went through, got my undergrad, my master's degree, and I was working on my PhD. And I ended up being part of the World Wide Web Consortium.
mm.
One of the projects me and my lab mates did was in 1994, we sent the first ever live synchronized audio video stream over the internet.
Oh, wow.
So it was really cool stuff. And I figured, hey, this is my gold rush. So instead of finishing my PhD, I left MIT, moved to California, recruited my lifelong best friend, and started two internet companies. One to make websites that was designed to kind of cash flow us. And our real passion was video games.
Mm,
And long story short, we had a lot of success at first. I did the very first website for the launch of the Sony PlayStation in the summer of 1995. I did the first website for Disneyland. We did the first website for Nissan Motors, a lot of big companies. But our real passion was the video games. And unfortunately, I was so dedicated to success, I would do almost anything to be successful.
right.
And I was working about 100 hours a week, no joke.
Mm,
It was long days, late nights, 7 days a week, no holidays, no vacations, no breaks. And my body broke down. And
mm.
I started having really severe chronic pain. And long story short, I spent 3 years in all sorts of treatments and therapies that didn't help. And I remember I finally got to see the head doctor at the Curlin Job Clinic, which is one of the top physical therapy clinics in the world.
Mhm.
And I was so excited. I'm like, wow, this guy will be able to help me, right? And so again, long story short, I walked into his office and he had all my medical records and he just looked at me and said, well, I'm sorry, son. There's nothing I can do here. No doctor can help you. You'll never be out of pain. You'll never be able to work. And I was astonished. I was literally speechless. And long story short, again, he recommended me for a lifetime disability when I was just 27 years old.
Wow.
And I told my best friend and business partner, figuring he'd be all, hey, Brent, hang in there. We'll get through it together. Right.
Right.
And instead of supporting me, he just said, well, if you can't work anymore, you have no use here. So I lost my positions at the two companies I had founded. He forged paperwork and there was all sorts of horrible things that happened. And he ended up stealing the website company from me for it that sold for millions of dollars. And I learned a little later the reason he did it all was he was secretly dating the woman I was seeing and that I was crazy in love with.
Golly,
And
man.
so that was just a power move on his part to get me out of the picture. And it worked. So, at 27, I was told I'd always be in terrible pain. I had no chance of recovery. I could never work again. And I had lost my two multi-million dollar companies. And I lost my best friend and had a terrible broken heart. And so, again, to make a long story very short, I turned first to positive thinking. And I thought maybe that'll turn things around. Nowadays, we call it the law of attraction. But, back in the 90s, we called it positive thinking, same stuff. Didn't help
Right.
me at all. Then I turned to alternative medicine, which I thought, wow, you know what? This really could be something. And so for about 5 years, I lived with my parents, running up a gigantic credit card debt, doing alternative medicine, all sorts of things, acupuncture, herbs, cleanses, homeopathy, and magnets, and, you know, osteopaths and chiropractors and Pilates and yoga and Reiki and all these things. And nothing helped me. It was crazy. And in early 2003, I had volunteered to be part of a study for an experimental surgery. And I found a doctor who said, Brent, I think I can help you. And I was like, absolutely, right? I'll sign anything. I'll take any risk. And again, long story short, I woke up from the surgery. Instead of curing me of my pain and getting me back to work, my right arm was paralyzed.
Oh no.
And so that was kind of rock bottoms in terms of the physical. And I tried all sorts of things to get my arm to move, another surgery, manipulation under anesthesia, CPM machine, all this stuff. And eventually, it was actually my Aunt Lauren who recommended I go see her friend. Her name was Terry.
Hmm.
And they had worked together in finance, and Terry had been infested with black mold. It almost killed her. And she found this process of energy healing that literally saved her life. And so for about 6 months, Lauren would call me once a month. Hey, Brent, have you seen Terry? No, Lauren, it's not going to work. It's a waste of my time. No one can help me. Right. And eventually she's like, okay, Brent, go see her. Not only will I pay for the session, I'll take you anywhere in the city you want to go for dinner. I was like, really? Even Drago? And she's like, oh, yes, I'll take you to Drago. I'm like, all right, I'm in. So I went to see Terry. She talked to me about the power of the subconscious. She introduced me to muscle testing, which is how we check for subconscious blocks, and asked me a lot of questions and did this block clearing thing for about an hour. And, I didn't expect it to do anything for me. But at the end of the hour, she says, okay, we're going to fix your arm now. And I'm thinking, yeah, you and what army, right?
Right.
And she kind of closed her eyes, went into a trance, and maybe 45 seconds later, there was this loud pop in my elbow, like a little firecracker went off. It's kind of similar to the pops and cracks we get as we get older, but like times 100. Like my whole body shook. And I was like, whoa. And I remember Terry's like, okay, let's try your arm. And I did, and I couldn't believe it. I got my arm back.
Wow.
And that was the moment that this very skeptical, rational, left-brained engineer and pragmatist decided and saw that my life path was to be a healer, to learn and teach and practice energy healing. But I want to be really honest with the audience. I don't want people to take away the wrong message. It was not like all my problems got solved in an hour and I lived
Right.
happily ever after. That'd be great. But that's for movies and storybooks. That's not real life. So all the chronic pain I had had, the limited mobility, depression, social anxiety, none of that healed instantly.
Right.
But my paralyzed arm from the surgery did. And it took a lot more work over years to make progress with the other stuff, which I did. But it was a large investment of time and money over years. And the second part of the story is so using that work, which I call basically, I like to think about self-improvement in three generations of technology. That the first generation is your typical law of attraction, positive thinking, vision boards, masterminds, etc.
Hmm.
Worth doing, but for the most part, doesn't move the needle for most people. The
Right.
second generation is where it gets interesting. That's what I learned from Terry. In the second generation technologies, we have a way to directly work with the subconscious. So that would be things like NLP, Psych K, emotion code, healing code, theta healing, things like that. And so to me, I saw it as just software. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, it's just like programming a computer, except we're programming people. So it was a great fit. So using the second gen techs I learned from Terry, I was able to reduce my pain. I was able to start a company, start to make money, come off disability. I started to exercise again. I started dating, and it was really amazing. I kind of got my life back, but I still wasn't thriving. I was just getting by. Which, by the way, getting by when you have your own place and are working and have money, much better than being on disability and not knowing how you're going to get your next meal. So it was much better, but I wasn't thriving. And then the next dark night of the soul came. I had gotten married and then divorced. My wife left me. Right after that, I was badly injured in a car accident, landed right back on disability. And around the same time, I had started to make money. I had made investments. And unfortunately, I hired a criminal as my financial advisor.
Oh, well.
And he stole over $55 million dollars from 300 people, including me.
Mm.
And I ended up after the car accident, barely able to move, sitting in bed in pain, finding myself almost $1 million in debt. That not only had he stolen all of my money, he had also refinanced my home without my permission and stolen all the money there
Oh, no.
and taken a home equity line of credit on it and stole all the money. And so I had really no option but to declare bankruptcy. And that was uh, things finally started to turn up. It was the day after my bankruptcy. I met the man who became, I really consider my mentor. His name was Carl Wolf. And it was actually my life coach that had told me about him.
Mhm.
I had worked with my life coach for a couple of years, and he was like, Brent, I don't know what to do with you. You're such a head case. I can't penetrate here, right? I'm
Right.
sorry. I need to kick you up the food chain to the master. And it was the craziest thing. I called Carl, and I spent my last $500 before bankruptcy on the session with him.
Hmm.
So I was kind of nervous about it, right?
Oh, I
No,
can see.
yeah, and I was like, oh God, I hope this works. And he had me meet him at the rollerblade rental station on Venice Beach. I'm like, that's a weird place to do a healing session, right? Aren't we going to
Right.
have like your office or your home or like a Buddha statue or a water fountain or something, right? Bead curtain, I don't know, something new age. And long story short, he had me rent rollerblades and spent about 20 minutes videotaping me while I rollerbladed in circles in the parking lot. Then we sat in his car. And at the time, I didn't know what he was doing. I learned later what was going on, but long story short, he just kind of criticized how I moved. It was a bunch of criticism. And then it was, thank you, nice to meet you, go home. I was furious. I called Brian, he would referred me. I started to chew his butt off, blah, blah, blah. He's like, Brent, I get it. Carl's out there. He said, just do me one favor, give it 3 weeks. And if nothing shifts or changes in 3 weeks, let me know. I'll try to make it right. I was like, okay. So I marked my calendar, 3 weeks out, call Brian, chew his butt off, right? And it didn't take 3 weeks. It was 3 days later. My business took off like I'd never seen. And long story short, within 3 days, I was fully booked for almost a month with private sessions, almost 80 new clients. And I had sold out my next training and had to find a bigger room. And it took me years to figure out what had happened. What Carl had introduced me to was a whole nother level of energy work that most people didn't even know exists. I call it the third generation.
Hmm.
And just to be clear, when I met him and had my first session, I had been a full-time energy healing practitioner for 5 years. I had been certified in like 17 modalities. I'd taken all these seminars, right?
Right.
But I had no idea what it was doing. I learned, it took me a few years to figure it out. What it was a combination of a meditative process we call beaming or consciousness shifting, which not only lowers the brain wave, it synchronizes the hemispheres to the brain and aligns the hormones. But I was so in my head, I couldn't feel it.
Right.
For many people, it turns on almost instantly your ability to see energy and aura and past lives on people with your open eyes. Really amazing stuff. Along with physical movements, where you learn how to read someone's energy through their movement. And that's what Carl had been doing. And I didn't realize that he was rewiring my brain as he was criticizing me.
Hmm.
And that is, to me, that was the missing piece. That was after I started doing the third gen work, what we call movement feedback holography, with the beaming or the consciousness shifting. That's the first time in my life I really started to thrive. And when I met Carl, he had asked me, he was like, Mr. Phillips, are you ready to add a zero to your income? And I kind of joked, I'm like, sure, Carl, let's add some more zeros on the left side of my income, right? And
Right.
it's like, no, no, no. I mean, 10x your income. I'm like, yeah, right. I thought it was just a come on, an icebreaker. He was
Right.
serious. Now, I did not 10x my income. For me, it was about a 3 to 4 times over the next year.
Hmm.
But other people that worked with him did. And I found, long story short, the first generation positive thinking is good to get your mind aimed in the right direction, but that alone won't do a lot of change. The second generation, the energy healing, working the subconscious, is wonderful for physical issues. So if you have a disease or chronic pain or emotional stuff or trauma, it's really good for that. But it really doesn't move the needle in terms of how you feel on the inside, your self-confidence, your idea of the self, your ability to make money and impact the world. You bring in that third gen, the movement, that was the click for me. And again, it's not like your life is perfect, but it's amazing how many little things start to break your way. That when you learn how to read energy through the movement, you literally shift your relationship to your body and the space and world around you. I would say it's like You showed up for a soccer game in hockey gear and you wonder why you're not doing well. That was my life before that. You just didn't understand the game you were playing. What I learned from Terry healed my body. What I learned from Carl healed my mind. And put it all together, it's an amazing combination. But again, it's not like all my problems were solved in a couple hours.
Right.
Many people see results and positive feedback very quickly, but to get to where you want to go, it does take an investment of time, money, energy, focus, just like anything. If you're looking for a magic bullet that's going to make everything perfect in an hour for free, you're going to be looking for a long time. I've never found such a thing. And so, I'm here to bring awareness because most people have never even heard of this stuff, don't even know it exists. When I had met Carl, again, I had been a full-time professional healer for 5 years. I had never heard of him or anything like what he did. And I know there's people listening that feel stuck, that feel hopeless, that don't know how they're going to get out of their situation. For some people, it's a physical issue, chronic pain or a disease or an injury. For some people, it's emotional trauma. It took me a lot of years to learn all my physical stuff was caused by emotional stuff. PTSD is a very real thing,
I know
and it
that's right.
causes it causes most of our physical financial relationship dysfunction. It really does. And then with the third gen, the movement and the beaming, that kind of uh, totally shifts your paradigm of life. That a lot of self-improvement is about tinkering at the edges, making you a little better version of you. My goal is to go in and make a radical shift, a whole new way of thinking about who are you? What is this you in your head as you go about the day and have thoughts and feelings and experiences? What is that? How does it work? Where does it come from? What exactly is the divine? How does it work? How does it manifest? And most of us, long story short, are totally stuck in our mind living from the ego. And it just doesn't work. And you can exert enormous effort from the ego all day, every day for years or decades. And you're generally not going to get very far. The people that really have big lives, big careers, really thrive, know how to live in their body connected to the space and the flow of life around them. And I know it sounds a little esoteric, but one of the great things I like to do with people with the beaming is usually in 3 minutes or so, we can make a huge shift in your internal state. I call it cranking up the volume of okayness. Then in 3 minutes, you got the same job, the same amount of money, right? The same body, the same friends, family, nothing, none of that changes. But you can make an inner shift so everything feels more okay. Your problems seem more solvable. Your goals seem more achievable. And that's huge because how we feel about ourselves and our life creates the outcome. And that's no mystery. I'm sure you know that. Anyone that's studied this stuff for more than 5 minutes knows that.
Mhm.
But the difficulty is how do we get there? And, unfortunately, I found a lot of healers and spiritual teachers. They have good facts and information. They just can't apply it properly. It'd be like if you came to me and said, "Hey, Brent, I want to get to the highest elevation possible. What do I do?" Oh, well, I point to Mount Everest and go climb it. It's like I'm correct, right? But
Right.
it's not that simple. It's really hard to climb Mount Everest. So that's what a lot of spiritual books do. They point you in the right direction, but they're not helpful to get you there. And that's why my background, I'm really an engineer more than a scientist.
Mhm.
A scientist discovers the laws of the universe, how it works. An engineer takes what a scientist has learned and applies it to real people and real life problems. So you might call me a metaphysical engineer.
Hmm.
I understand the laws of the universe, physical and metaphysical, at a very deep level. My goal is to find people and help they apply this knowledge to see real results in their life. It would be the same with airplanes. Leonardo da Vinci sketched out a helicopter in the 15th century. So the science was figured out. He figured out you could have rotating blades at an angle that would create lift. So in the 15th century, we had figured out a lot of the science for building an airplane.
Hmm.
But it took us almost 500 more years to figure out the engineering.
Right.
Exactly how do you do it? What is its shape? And that's my goal with people. Yeah, I'll teach you a little about how the universe works, but there's not that much to learn. It's really about, okay, my goal is to understand where you're at and where you want to be and find how to get you there.
Well,
And what
Brent,
one of my teachers said is being a lighthouse.
right,
I just want to light the way and make it easy for you.
right. So, do you have a consultation? People can call you
I
or
do. Um,
email you.
yeah, I run my business a lot differently than I used to.
Hmm.
That I used to, just let people book sessions, whatever. Now I prefer to talk to people ahead of time because I'm not the best fit for everyone.
Right.
And so what I want to offer to everyone listening, including you, Kyle, your friends and colleagues, anyone that think they may want to work with me, go to my website at awakeningdynamics.com. And there's a big button that says book a call. I'll give you 15 minutes for free, a discovery call. I just want to get to know a little about you. Where are you at? Where do you want to be? What are your strengths and assets? What are your weaknesses and liabilities? And based on that, I will do one of two things. If you're the kind of person I can really make a difference with, I'll tell you that. And we'll work together to create a plan to get you from where you are now to where you want to be, step by step. If you're not a good fit for me, what I will do is I will do my best to refer you in the right direction because I certainly don't want to be taking anyone's time or money unless I have some confidence I can really make a difference for them. And, I'll warn everyone, I'm not a good fit for everyone. I'm really intense. I'm obsessed with the truth. I have very little patience for nonsense or fluff. I'm all about what's really going on. What's the core of the issue? How do we solve this? And as is true in life, the bigger the shift you want, the more uncomfortable it may be.
Gotcha.
So, like, if you're skinny and weak and you want to have big muscles, that's going to be a lot of work. A lot of weightlifting. You're going to be sore a lot of regimented eating and protein. You can do it, but if a big change will take a lot of work. My goal is to make it as easy as possible. That I've learned all those modalities and systems and teachers and reverse engineered it. And basically, I did with healing and coaching and meditation what they taught me at MIT. You
Right.
find the best stuff out there, you take it apart, figure out how it works, then you put it back together and make it better. And that's my role here. I didn't invent energy healing or intuition or non duality or any of those things. They've been around for thousands of years. What I did do was learn from the masters at a very deep level and then improve it and offer it to people in a way that's very accessible to the modern person. That reading texts that are 4,000 years old is great if you're a scholar, but most regular people don't get a lot of value out of it. Just like you don't need to know how to build an engine to drive a car.
Hmm.
I learned how to build the engine, right? You just drive the car. And I would say for anyone, the only thing holding us back, no matter what your issue, is what you think you know. That is our greatest enemy.
Well, what
So you
I'm
have a choice. You can either be right about what you think you know, that you're hopeless, that you're a failure, that you're not, and okay, if that's what you want,
hmm
no problem. If you're willing to be wrong about the really fundamental things, including your idea of what are you? What is God? How does life work? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying we have to be willing to be wrong.
Gotcha.
Then the floodgates open and the miracles can show up.
Well, what I'm going to do is I will put your links in the description to make it easier for folks to find you. Brent, unfortunately, our time's up, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
Oh, this has been great. Excited to be here.
And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button for my regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network